You know what the amazing thing in settings and travels is how to codify your own system and line positions that brings everything information lines at grounds live. What does that mean to you? It's not information setting a one-dimensional system in a three-dimensional mind screen, that's for sure. It's all over the settings. You modify it, you triangulate it, and set positions high center so you get a flux screen to adaptation so it's this location of travel. Let's get you into all levels how you see the levels, the intelligence, the volume existing live. So how does that any indicate lines of anything in travel when you come into deposition locations? Just because I'm going live doesn't mean I'm live. I say it's live in a certain line of codification. So understanding that through traction, this helps you operate your settings and set position locations. On Friday, in sequence come into line position. We got line centers coming into all levels. All humanity is going to be all lines and line coordinate centers and travel into their security blankets. So having that security blanket will be no more, which means basically we have to truly understand how to codify our own systems through configuration setting. Everything is going to be canceling out formation lines at grounds in position 2030, backing track lines in position 2025. All that's going to be gone. Cancel, delete, and erase. The formation line setting is a formation system of going forward in traction, starting off in 2030 line design lines and setting set position, location, measure, and scale, direct, and redirect to set position of panel. The process of communicates and setting all lines. Everything location of its own consciousness will be in its high position of its remote viewing in real-time measure in your mind lines conceptual system into your third graph screens. Directing the lines is 7 over setting and process over 10 over sequence and 12 over through foundation grounds of DNA. That puts all communication in your systems all through travel. And this is going to help you modify your settings and really understand how to motivate the system locations at all levels. The team has to start to understand how to use harmonics. Now you guys have a test on that and screen adaptation to its cycle next Friday in screen, which is already here in sequence, which is a constant continuous floor. So the team needs to get into all core centers, how to use their telepathy signatures, how to use their telepathy waves, how to code weave their system, how to go through triangulation lines of flux, how to go through high centers into harmonics. Harmonics is all based on harmonious. Harmonious is a rhythm pattern, line position, location, setting through monotone. I go through X-line phone, high core centers, a xylophone, synthesizer, line, anything with a music box, voice box. Set core centers, lines of track, center, location to systems. Anything through a guitar, anything through tone, anything through music. It's position of rhythm coming into the alpha lines, the delta, theta, and omega, and zeta, gamma, zeta, location, sign, high position lines of travel. So we all have to understand how to identify their own system because it's going to be its own platform of its own Alexa, which means it's going to be operating its own system. Very powerful where they're more comfortable connecting with their own universal system of their own normal state, the state of mind that they're in, track correlation system and travel. So there's one English language, universal system. That's all it is in setting. I'm speaking English, but I'm speaking English in my universal language and all languages all at once. But it's a clocking system. English is how you codify it. English is not English. This is not vocabulary of English. It's not like taking English class and studying this on a novel or a book or anything about English, okay? English is identify how you codify English. This helps you understand how to modify your system in all lines of travel. This is going to help you understand how to codify your own system through all levels into your algorithms, location settings, your binaries, and know exactly what you're doing interact ways to its system, all through settings. You become your own programmers, okay? Setting track centers, those are 300 lines of flux over a screen. Now I'm going to be talking more like a computer now, team. You have to be ready on that signal because that's all basically harmonics. There's all different lines, harmonic lines, of tone lines, setting line, specification settings. So it's all connected to the mind. Everything's processed through the mind. Everything's done through the mind, right? We just have to understand how to codify it, location or body lines of 3, 6, and 9 of travel. Okay, setting the triangulation settings of flux over screen. 3 signals up screen adaptation to its cycle, or center core system and equalines core center equilibrium. 3 tractions in box frame position of main frame, processing communication lines of 2 lines of track creation lines of 3 lines of frame, directing core centers into position lines of 6 lines of frame and travel. Setting core centers, indirect signals, and ground lines of surface and travel communications. All right, directing lines of doors, 3 lines of signals, process lines over pi and generation screen, process over signal line position to measure. Scales communication lines of planetary service, process line is signals, 3 signals and string theory and 3 lines of communication. Directing signal lines of grounds into kaleidoscope, core centers lines of travel. See? See, look at this. See how I can move it? Let me just position here. Sending travels. See, as a correlation setting, your finger points just travel so fast in communications. Sending core system lines of communication, direct signals, ground lines of service. High travels endpoint communication, right? Sending back in signal, back in balance, back in operation system line of travel, right? So what that is basically looking at the digital frame. I want you to really take a look at what you're looking at. Friday set position is going to be its own conscious, its own platform. Everything is setting lines of high position. Any platform, any application setting, any apps, any energy grids, any power grids, anything in set position to its own algorithm, it's going to have its own binary. It's going to be its own codified system in real time. Now, the real time is going to change everything in your real time, inside position, inside, outside, inside you. That's what this is in travel. So it's going to be consciously aware of everything, a platform of its planes, where it's coming in, modification system. It comes in all modification grounds, a surface track relation system in your conjugal case to its awareness. It sets its own inhibitors. It sets its own antenna in your system, which is an attachment setting a screen. That's where you come unification of one. You're not separated. You've never been separated. For you to understand these things, it's a unification setting through its ascension. So the ascension of its consciousness is going to come to you through measure and scale through time. But real-time measure puts everything all at once, and everything's going to be existing all at once. So when you're communicating with anything in cycle, let's start with the basic ground lines of surface and track communication, high operation settings and travel. Sending course lines. Triangulation. All right. Talking through a triangulation of 3, right? 3 lines of signals. Process lines of 4 o'clock and system of pi. That's pi right there, right? So set position lines. So when you get your own codification setting, you're changing the seconds, minutes, and hours in travel, right? So once you get in your imagination line as a core track, division lines of cycles, 3 tractions and 3 division. Okay, setting core lines of 4 settings, a high position to star measure. Scales communicates in high position lines of 4 signals in set position. Okay. Setting travels, direct signals and ground lines of surface and traction. Okay, everything is a teleportation vessel. Okay, everything's a teleportation vessel. Now understand the travels in communication setting through an open sequence, open panel, open operation setting into your stargates, star portals, and your solar system in travel communication. Solar system, right? It's easy to do a solar system because it modifies you from inside and outside interactions. Setting line signals of 4 lines of flux inside track location. Inside, guys, right? This is outside. Remember that. This is inside of everything. This is your simulation, how you see things. See the blocks and all that setting? It's all set up in locations, right? So you don't have to create anything. You just have to modify it through its intelligence, how to communicate with its setting, through its telepathy, through its harmonics, and set position lines of travel, and direct signals of grounds, and all set attractions, okay? So it's a lot more fun. You just have that in position. See, solar system. It's amazing how you just do a solar system, any angle, any position lines, point graphs. So Friday in sequence, everybody is going to be in the mind interpretation of a box spring. Setting core lines of alpha, omega, micro, and macro. Yes, people, that's what's going to happen. Everybody's going to be alpha, omega, micro, macro. Now, setting lines of alpha sets 2 lines of tones, setting lines of track location omega, and 3 lines of signals of 4 tractions. Setting direct lines into macro, into micro. Now, the microscopic system, line core centers, and the micro specs sets lines of core track correlates and setting to your symbiotes. Directing lines into modification lines of the mind, into levels of macro location setting to alpha and beta. Process calculations and green lines, a center core system, travels lines and point lines communications, right? There's a center core system, electrical lines, screen adaptations, and code weaving. Code activation lines in track localizations and 7 digital frames and communication, right? Waving panels, process lines of 3 angles and 3-point lines of graph, center core system lines of travel. So have a direct line link, process and communication system, all through travel, and point communications. Okay? Center core system and line core centers into your sky grids and skynets. All right, center core system, 3 travels, 3 direct signals, and 3 grounds. Okay? 3 grounds, 3 lines, signals, and 3 communication settings. 6 over line, set position over 7, set position lines, a high position at 5, sets position at 12. Configuration system, all 2 settings. Okay, so we go through the cataracts, core lines of the eye cycles, 3 lines of signals, and 3 track locations. There's intelligence. Formation grounds, core centers, lines of travels into earth tones, and center core system lines and earth line, point lines of graphs, and communications at high lines of service. So we have Earth point 1, Earth point 2, Earth point 3, and Earth point 4 in lines of division lines in question. Now we direct lines into modification lines execute. The platform's in communication setting comes in high lines of channel. The operation signals processes the tubing system, all lines are calculated in setting. Earth lines of 1, Earth lines of 2 and 3 and 4 in set tractions. 7 line signals, process lines and box frames in communication setting, and all communication system all through telepathy. Process calculates lines, grounds, centers communicates setting high lines of surface and traction. All right? So that's communications back and grounds, back and surface, back and traction. All right, so there's a lot of things happening on Friday. So I'm just getting you guys to understand how to use the percentage now. The percentage is the volume. All right, it's the vast, it's the volume, it's the velocity. 3 lines of signals, 3 lines of 1, 2, and 3 lines of measure. Scales, communication, height, center, and acceleration here. That's an 8-line track. Sets lines ether, core, and ferments of 3 travels. All right, so we got the vast, we got the velocity, and we got the volume in 3 centers. All right, process line, directed signals, ground set, position, location, human residence, and travel. All right, so we've got Signify, setting lines XT1000s and 3 platforms and set tractions. Oh, that's right, guys. XT1000s will be in your mind lines right away in sequence. You'll see them inside and outside your system, locations, your settings, and time, position, location, travels. 3 signals, 3 centers, 3 travels, 3-point lines of graph communications. Setting direct signals and ground lines of service in 2 box frames. The 2 box frames allocate time frames. All line signals into formation grounds and communications setting high track location. Setting your tesseract that modifies your system to your Merkaba, your tesseract, and your tetrahedron and set position lines of travel and track locations. Setting box centers. We go through waiting lines of panels, open window frame. And we got another open window frame and set position lines of travel communication system of travel. Setting core lines of calculation setting, overline sequence. Now the overline sequence sets communication setting to an override. Sets communication lines and unification setting to 2 lines of travel. Setting box frames, 3 lines of signals, cross lines of angles and point lines of communication. Directing the lines of platforms. Box frame, 2 box frames, center cores, centers of 3 lines of flux and settings, 3 lines of waving, signal lines, modification lines of cerebro. Directing signals, ground lines of setting, and set position lines of travel. Okay? So, this cores lines of calculation lines. These are the nostrils, core lines of your nose, 2 elements in screen adaptation. Process lines in, process lines out. So it goes inline center, outline sequence. Setting lines of track cores, centers, and continuous force. The sets communication setting and configuration system sets off the channel line, sets lines of reset position location Y2K. 3 lines of signals, 3 lines of center, 3 lines of location system. Off through setting on position, all through tractions, right? Going through the receptacle screen, adaptation lines of throat line pattern, lines of panels and both line rotation lines, the earth line tone, set space line communication lines, set lines inhibitors over screen, lower line core centers and antenna, line position location of beacon light, direct lines of flux over screen, solar graph communication lines, measure and scale, and balance communication setting of flux, setting travels and communication lines, high position lines of travel. Sets the cerebral cortex line in the mystical cortex. Now the position lines of the sim cortex sets the codex. Now the codex sets the line signal location system all through travel. Back in signal, back in balance, back in operation setting. All right. Symbolism. Line settings, lines of high position location. So we take the 300 volume. Sets percentage over settings equals lines of a question. Sets lines into box frame. Triangulation on waiting signal. Okay. Now, how we modify that, guys, to codify anything in setting, everything is an algorithm in set position of 4 tones, but you use the 3 lines of signals. So for 3 lines, you have to go 3 angles, 3 setters in set position, right? Because it has to travel, right? And it goes 3, 3, 3 in set position of signal, okay? And then you ground lines of question lines, core centers, lines of clock and system, 0 lines of gravity, question over setting, process lines, and figure 8 rotations to its surface. Setting core lines of box frames, 4 lines of measure, scales communication lines of 3 lines of measure, scales process communication lines of high setting, ground lines of surface and traction, all through direct signals modification. All right. Planetary service, line centers, solar stream, solar connection system, all through travel, sets lines of 3 lines of flux and travel communication, solar system. All calculated modified tractions. All right. So overline signal, over graph signal, and set position lines of travel. Okay. Setting course, recourse lines, and reconfigure system all through calculation in your solar system. Setting sequence lines of panels, open sequence, open panel, open operation screen. All right. Solar system inside tractions. All right. So you'll be in the center operation. This is you in set position. You in the center operation, understanding what's going on, right? Through structured design line. 12 graph screens, high center location setting. Let's get into the ruler. Now, a ruler is basically a graph communication lines. It's a level screen line adaptation setting of 4 markers, setting track lines in space. Now, you can do it how you want to do it, right? So it's kind of like set lines of 4 signals and 3 lines of settings and 4 communication system and travel. All right. So this is all through a ruler, right? A ruler here and lines, graph, and communication settings. So you process how you want to create the ruler yourself. So the ruler aligns its ground lines on 144 platform, directing lines of grounds and open line sequence in 3 platforms and track location system. But you have to direct and redirect signals in metal line communication. Setting lines of ground lines of service sets the towers of communication. All right. It gets more complicated now because you have to add the indication line screens. All right, so you had 3 lines of measure, we had 2 lines of tractions and direct signals, right? That's a ruler. When you go to a store to buy a different ruler, you're constantly buying another ruler to another ruler, another ruler, measure and scale, right? But when in the mainline conceptual setting, you can change the ruler any way you want. Okay, it can change it in any information, any geometric, any design lines, type specification, because it's all in the memory of its imagination system through its core. It's all done through its phenomenal system and travel, okay? All right, so we ground lines of service, process lines of 1/2, and 3 lines of measure and scale. All right, now we have an open line sequence, set lines of 0 gravity. 0 gravity core centers, XT1000 comes to platforms over sequence lines of panel. Process lines indicate lines, directing lines, and telepathy wave signature lines of communications. Now, having direct line link is a process communication lines of floor mats, directing lines of signals and 2 lines of angles, 3 lines of signals, and 4 lines of graphs. Know exactly what you're doing in location setting to your buildings and traction, right? Look at the building and travel. Look at that. Look at the beauty of that. Ha ha ha! Woo! Now, getting in signal lines of ground, you can overline the sequence and set position, location, and travel communications. Directing lines of grounds, and you have a platform and a triangulation box right there, right? So see that right there? It's an open sequence right here. It's an inside track location. Inside and outside, right there, right? So it's all about connecting high centers and 144 structure, design lines in the mainline conceptual setting, how to use a ruler and set position, right? So you can lines, core centers, your compass, 3 lines of track centers and direct signal. There's your compass. Now, core centers line calculation setting, you have a planet line screen, dactation settings, locations. You have a tool set that operates the system location lines of communication to create the structure of the design. Now, the formation line ground overlines the sequence lines of panel that process lines of angles, 3 lines of signals, process lines of 4 track correlation setting time. Setting sequence, overline position, overlapping sequence lines, communication lines of time, right? See how it changes the formation grounds? All right, so add that line, add that position, add that tractions, add 3 triangulations, overline signals in process communication, directing lines of triangulation flux over screen, right? Now I'm going inside and outside now. So I'm just showing overlapping sequence. Panel operation line, 1 indicates a system, and ground lines of surface and tractions. All right. Now we're going to overlap this signal, process lines of 2 and process lines of 4 and travel. Set across lines, setting position of 1 and 1 set location lines of correlation lines of travel. Have a direct line link, modify the system, all through communication setting and travel. Okay, very powerful stuff in travel. All right. So we have the compass setting up the line screen and a 4 lines of flux. Okay, the formation grounds. So it's all about understanding the connections to the sim, the avatar, or your transformer, truly understand how to create a structure of its holographic city already setting. So we process lines, the indication setting, a laser track centers, and alpha, delta, and theta. Process lines of 3 windows, triangulations of flux over 3, setting lines of 3 track correlation setting into aerodynamics. 3 signals lines of ground lines of surface travel. Now we overcross location lines as high centers, puts all communication setting and travel communications. Now directing lines of grounds, we overline this signal. The process lines of indicate setting the flux over lines and temperature reading screens. Directing lines signify position, overline setting. Okay? And then that position, all lines, this opens up its pi, 1 triangulation, and another pi, another triangulation of flux over screen. Directing core centers and a webbing signal, line rotations, inside tractions. Okay, this is a plasmazine wall that center cores its structure of its design inside track communications direction. Overline sequence, overline panel, overline signal, and rotation service and traction. That's how it's set up, right? Very powerful stuff. So Getting an understanding how to use a triangulation line is all about understanding how to use a ruler and a split lines of anomaly and 3 travels and communications, sending direct signals, ground lines of service. Now we have platitude lines of rotation, service, and transitions. 3 lines of signals, 3 lines of measure and scale. Different structure, different design, right? But you can still see the building, all position point graphs, right? 4 central system is a clocking system of 0. Okay, open all signals and communication lines of grounds to set position lines, high lines of surface and travel. So we signify the ground line communication setting. Mothership comes in high lines of force and direct signals of ground communication, right? Overlooks the path and pathogen lines of its crop circle and direct signals. I'm constantly changing the geometric lines of shapes of seconds, minutes, and hours, guys. Constantly changing the frame, right? But you can still see the structure as set position, location, and measure that scales as communication lines of balance and traction. So using 4 frames in one cycle, 1 center, 1 traction, 1 division, 1 locations. Back in sequence, back in panel, back in operation, back in service. Okay? But it's amazing when you put it all together, all through a ruler. How you see a ruler, how you see a frame, how you see a traction, how you see directions. Okay? Overline sequence, overlines a panel, and it's pyramid and track communications. Different structure, different design, but the building's still there, right? So, understanding lines and measure is a scale of communication setting. I don't know if you guys understood anything, ratios, proportions. But ratio is what it is to codify. How I see ratio, how I see proportions, how I see addition, how I see subtraction, how I see multiply, how I see divide. It's how I see it. This has nothing to do of everything that everybody else knows. See, that's not codify. Okay? So you have to understand how that works with manipulation in its own setting. If I get a triangulation flux in 3 lines of angles and 2 lines of measure, okay, 2 lines of signals, 3 zeros, and 3 track calculation system. Very complicated, right? But this is all divide. That's divide. That line's a high center interference of this position of 1, 1, position lines of 0. That's simple. I'm talking about this. See how it complicates things? But it's not. This is codifying. This isn't codifying. This is codifying. And the more you understand that, the more you understand how to create the structure of a holographic design line in set position. So once you understand the division, location, setting, dividing, you add square roots and screen lines. Position lines of box frame and set correlate centers lines of travel. Sets communication lines, location grid and set position. Process lines, signature lines, 3 ground communications back and forth. Setting communications high centers of 3 signals and 3 communications setting of high lines of surface and traction. Directing lines of modification over cross location, outline signals in outer space and travel. Directing ground lines to high center interference, 1 flux over screen, 3 lines of triangulation, flux over screen line adaptation, 3 lines of signals and process communications. There's the intelligence. See, look what I created through structure. Look what I created through structure, through divide. So everything that you get in position of schematics is a drawing. Okay? You're actually going through the mind adaptation of drawing itself through its image that puts the lines of communication setting, how you use it through a ruler or anything through a compass or anything in travel. But you have to travel through the configuration setting and codify settings through encryption. That's the only way you're going to be able to how to identify your system, how you are creating your own holographic design and creating. All right? Once you understand the process of that, you realize your holographic city is already created through creating. But what you have to understand is that you can constantly change things with the creation that you're already in creating of. Real-time measure, real-time scale, real-time balance. Everything existing and everything's happening all at once. It's set position lines of travel. Setting signals and ground lines of surface and travel. Ink communicates setting point lines of graph. Okay? Over cross lines, signal lines, half pipe, high centers, high travel, high communication, high lines of surface and travel communications. Directing lines of ground and center communicates in high lines of surface traction. Okay, see the solar sail, right? See the capsule in between? Center core system is lines of travels passing by. It's like seeing a cloud going from one signal line, ground lines, core centers, lines of 3 angles, setting lines of 6 over lines of 3 position, in solar graph communication, screen lines, adaptations of flux over screen. Setting communication, line grounds. All right, setting communication system overrides sequence and line position. Look how powerful that is. Whoa. See, this is all done through divide. Divide, right? Let me do through addition. I'm just trying to get you guys to understand 1 times 1 is never 1. Never is 1. It's not even a formation of 1. It doesn't exist. But how it exists to you is to codify it. But if it doesn't exist, there's nothing perceived through consciousness, right? Until you perceive it. And once you perceive it, then you understand how to use it through its imagination setting that puts everything in the mind to the outlined space and locations of inside you through the center core. Puts all communication lines of balance and travels inline rotation system all through track locations. All right, let's go through addition. All right, 1, position line plus line 3. Okay, 1 plus 3 equals 4, right? Now, getting the ground lines, Schumann resonance, process lines, alpha, delta, theta. Process lines equals lines of higher self. Process communication lines, earth tone, same position of 3 lines of measure and 3 scales and 4 settings. Now, getting that position lines, the avatar. The avatar controls the power generator. Now, every line that all line correlates in setting is position lines. A high position on all core center location is a spring. Directing spring lines is a plasma screen. Directing lines and archetypes and core centers of two structures, the panels communicate inside tractions, right? That's what the avatar basically controls the lines. It creates the coil, creates the gravity, creates the pressure, and the compressor settings, location of the decompressor. So travels in the atmospheres, the ozones, line communication setting into gravitation setting of soil. Directing string lines of grounds and water lines of high center interference travel into location setting that puts into hydroponics. Hydroponics is a hypertone, high core centers lines to travel, direct lines and line position at all levels, process communication lines of free energy, and that communication lines of 2 panels and sync lines, high position location, atmosphere, and line screen adaptation to the flux. All right, so setting lines of higher self, setting position locations, all levels of the avatar, and we get into the sim overlooking. Sim is the modification lines of its structure that's design line and set position of system and travel. Okay, and then that basically puts everything right. So once you understand that through the avatar, through all position location higher self and anything of the sim and natural correlation setting, then you can use 1 plus 3 equals 4, right? So 1 is what? You start with 1 is what? Is the higher self. Setting lines of plus the angle point lines of graph and indicating of its clocking system. That's the plus. North, south, and east, so you're going in direction. 3 line signals is the position of its avatar. Setting is the 3 line signal location of travel. Directing lines of 3 lines of flux over screen. 4 is the indication set equals lines of set position of the sim, overlooking the system which you created through holographic structure of design. That's how you come into position to all as a higher self, the avatar, and the sim. All through clocking, all through measure, all through scale. Okay? I know it's everybody going, whoa, okay, now I understand why I have to use the higher self, the 1 plus 1, right? 1, okay, is the higher self, which is 12 line signals into 0 gravity, equals lines of correlation, equilibrium, right? So, plus, okay, is the clocking system of north, east, west, and south through direction. Okay, so if you're creating a building, it's north here, east here, south here, west here. Creating a structure, creating a building. All right, inside, everything's inside, not on the outside. So you can do outside, doesn't matter because it's inside you happening, inside position. But here we go again. So get a true understanding how 1 times 1 or 1 plus 1 or 1 equals 1 or 1 equals 1 or 1, it doesn't matter. What it matters, do you qualify? It doesn't make any sense to you. It has to make sense to you. There's no way it doesn't make any sense to you. It's the brain conversion location to its acceptance known as exactly what's going inside of me through outside of me of inside me. That's all lines of travel communications, right? So now you know what 1 is, right? 1 controls the position locations to its higher self, all right? The plus is the north, east, west, and south of what you're doing through structural design through its clocking system, all right? Now, again, that position, powerful stuff. The other one is location to what? The avatar, yes, the power generator. All right, and then once you get in that position location, equal, okay, is the destination where you're going with the indication through its arrows. 4 lines of setting in sequence, in set position. Okay, now in direct signals, line position, all levels, once you have the equal line core centers, you got the structural lines here, structural lines here, structural lines here, 3-dimensional doors and 4 settings. Now, in that position locations, the actual answer itself is the sim, overlooking above system of what you created in structured design and set tractions. Okay? That's how basically it comes in 1 plus 1. Now you understand what 1 is because it's always in setting. You start with the higher self, you go with the avatar, then you have to understand the position locations. So I'm just trying to get you guys to understand these things so it's much easier for you to modify so you can codify it much easier to understand it through its holographic system. Knowing how to use a ruler or how to use a compass and tractions. But it's very powerful, right? When you just let your mind go and stop thinking about what you're doing. It's like when you're drawing a picture, you're just looking at the picture, you're looking at the flow. You're not looking at the person. You already know what they look like in the mind, right? So you just sketch it out. Set signals and settings, process communication setting, outlines of travel, directing modification ground lines, a set position location to its system, all through setting line rotation to its system, lines of communications, all setting high core centers, line communications to its settings, high operation signal line rotation to its service, high track communications, high setting, high position location to its system, all through tractions. Now I have a direct line link, process and communication high centers in that communication system, overtones, ground lines, and settings, process in that communication high center configuration system, all through travel, all through mechanism. High tones, high force lines, high direct signals, ground lines is setting and travel communicates to its cycle, high line position locations above lines and ground lines of surface and tractions, directing inline rotation service and travel communication system, all through settings. Process communication high travels, overline settings and process communications, directing link, process in communication high lines of service, sets communication setting and all communication high travels, and direct lines of modification grounds. Set communicates high centers, high lines of signals. Now the process of communication system, open signal lines of ground communications. Now getting into the modification high centers comes in configuration and high travels and high position location setting, high line rotation system of face recognition. Me. See, I'm not looking at me because I already know what it looked like. It's all levels, guys. It's all inside. It's all the vision. It's the flow. Get into the flow. Get into the flow. Get into the flow. Right? That's me. Right? With the glasses, with the hair, the basic grounds of what I look like, So you don't need to look at people. That's what you got to get out of. It's here in the mind. Right? It's a formation. It's a sketch of me, but it just basically gets the grounds, set position. All right. Center communication is knowing exactly how to get into flow lines of setting and travels. Now, getting direct lines gets you in all levels. So you get into add, subtract, multiply, divide, or anything like that, position locations, or anything ratio proportions. You codify it how you want to. If you don't codify it, thoughts, action, emotions on Friday will take it over. It will take it over. It creates its altered state of its mind. It changed the communication lines of attractions. It changed the holographic screen lines adaptation, and it changed the seconds, minutes, and hours in your frame. Right away, if you don't codify it. You have to codify everything because it's you that becomes you. You become you. You are your true authentic you. So it's balancing everything inside that balances everything outside that balances everything inside of you through the inner core, right? So it's a spectrum that you start to see. You're constantly going to see the window frame in incision location inception, right? This is you, remember, right? You're always seen from the inside. So in that position, this is the conscious on the other side tractions, but there's no other side. See, there's an equal line here, right? Okay, but the equal is actually the box frame. Okay, that's the central setting and position of its main frame. Okay, so what you have to understand to the up frame position line is the box frames, the traveloids, and position location to its triangulation frame. Okay, how you see through a window frame in settings of 3 travels, or how you see through a box frame and 3 signals and 3 travels. Okay, or how you see the other side of frame in set position of outer space and traction, or how you see through the center platform of communications, or how you see the equilibrium but equal line core centers of the transits and direct signals of modification grounds. Those set tractions. But it's amazing when you come into that position location measure and scale and communications, high lines of setting. All through communication system, all through travel. All right? All through the settings from here to here. That's communication. From here to here, that's communication of clocking and foundation settings. So you already clock your system, you already connect with the consciousness lines all through pi. So you don't have to worry about the seconds, minutes, and hours because you already traveled through the seconds, minutes, and hours in seconds. But you guys are in a half a second. All right? Then you go half a meter, half a metric meter, half a scale, half a balance meter. You can do whatever you want, but you have to codify it. You don't codify it, your thoughts, your action, motions will take its own course, of its own recourse, of its own operation system. It will create its anomalies and create its own alteration setting of its own state of mind. But it's pretty amazing, right? Flash drive communication of a sketch of me. Let's see if we can change that. Waving screen, adaptation lines, set position location of a system, overline sequence. You're going to see a smile. Okay, I'm just changing the wavy line pattern. More identification of my modification models. Let's core track centers. Let's bring in the eye lines, eye signals, and set position. There we go in traction. Ooh-ah. Smiling. Woo! And there's the neckline screen adaptation. Okay? See, the thing is, there's no thinking. There's no thinking at all. Thoughts are not thinking. Thoughts, it's like catching a thought and not understand thinking of thought and thought of thinking. So there's no thinking of thoughts. There's nothing to think about because there is no thoughts. So if there's no thoughts, there's no actions. No actions, there's no emotions. So what you guys have to identify is to balance it with your thoughts, your action, emotions, is see yourself through precog. And what you get in precog, you're now in a collaboration of balance with each other. That's a unification of one. So what you understand is that you're catching your thoughts even before you think through clocking and foundation and grounds. All through setting, position, location, calculation, setting, operations, set, position, location, calculation, high position, location, and measure. So scales communication, let's get in line position locations into all this multiplication. All right, setting lines of track centers. 2 times 1 equals what? 2? 2 times 1 equals 2, right? Or 2 times, but then you understand 2 times 1 equals 10, right? So what you have to understand is how does it make sense to you? How does this make sense? Well, you have to understand the higher self, it's the 2, okay? And the x, okay? Remember, anything line, position line has X lines or a plus line, a screen adaptation of everything, or equilibrium in the screen lines. It's all of your clocking system, north, east, west, and south. North, east, west, and south. That's the time, okay? You're clocking over here on east, west, south, and north. Okay, that's how it works. And the 1 is the avatar, okay? And the equal is the destination that you're basically putting your holographic structure, north, east, west, and south. Okay, so that's 4 channels each, setting lines of signals through pi, sets position lines of height travels in 8 lines of measure, 8 lines of scales, 8 lines of travels, and 8 locations. 4 8s in signals and grounds. Okay? I know it's complicated stuff. But once you get in confirmation of letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols, not only they work for you, but they give you abundance. Now, this is how they give you abundance. They give you abundance once you understand them through harmonics. And once you understand them through harmonics, it's much easier to ground the communication setting. Let's get a track position lines, high center interference, signals, ground lines of scribulation, line rotation settings, high processing communication lines, and high position location systems, all through phone calculation. All in the phone, right? All right, setting grounds, setting core centers, setting track communication, setting frequency lines, 4 lines of signal, all right? Process lines, 2 lines of setting, 2 positions, right? So that's 2 tractions in alpha, beta. Setting position alpha, beta, ground lines. Setting core lines and position of communications equals lines of theta. Set position lines of tone lines, sequence lines, and triangulation box. Setting core centers of tone frequency lines of voice line grid. Setting core lines of calculation lines of echo chamber. Setting lines of Zulu, Fox, 1 signal, 1 center, 1 traction, 1 division. Okay, that's the phone lines, the reception location of the system, right? Through alpha, beta. All through the phone when you pick it up through frequency. So when you codify it, they understand it. Because they codify their own system. They have to codify their own system because they have to protect their system. Everything that you touch, there's no position location of beta in any way information setting. That's the one ground set correlation setting that offlines its communication with humanity. When 1 line core centers in a parable to a variable, setting lines of track correlations in high position of travels into a paradox of screen. Setting lines of travel in direct signals. So every time you pick something up, your one-dimensional mind in frame communications and an overline sequence of communications, all through flux. That puts you in an override, an overdrive, a combustion screen, adaptation, high center fingers, high location with system through a virus. The process of communication setting is to get out of the one-dimensional mind, okay, into the 3-dimensional of space. One-dimensional mind, a 3-dimensional space. Get out of that and codify your own system. Become all levels of space and time. Get into your creative cycle through the inner child. Be in the specification system of the mode lines. Put a correlation and calculation lines. Use the detailed communication imagination system. Use your phenomena in all ways and forms. All through a phone. All through encryption. They prefer that because they codify their own system. Okay? They have to codify their own system so they know exactly where you are in your frequency. They know exactly where you are in your mind. They know exactly where in your thoughts. They know exactly where you are in your actions. They know exactly where you are before you even know where you are. That's how powerful it is in location with setting all through its consciousness. But it's amazing when you're not thinking, you know what you look like. It's amazing through structured design. Oh, okay. Now let's add the beard line. Add the beard. See, if I add the beard, it changes everything. Attractions, right? So it's amazing when we start to understand how this all works, guys. It's powerful, powerful stuff when you just let your mind go and just have fun with it. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible when you get position lines of travel. There's me. Booyah. Okay? Hoo-ah. So, like I said, having fun. Just having fun, not even thinking. I didn't think about drawing. I just drew in the mind. It's all in vision, how you want to see yourself. So when you open up the clarity and you open up the synchronicities, the synchronies, how you want to see it in position, there's no right or wrong of anything you do in track locations anyway, because once you codify it, it's yours. If you don't codify it, it's not yours. So it's about balancing your mind and what you're doing through adaptations into the body itself, the body that you're in, that puts lines of communications in, geometric lines of position of balance, and travel in communication, how you see multiplication, how you see it add, subtraction, or divide, or anything in track correlation setting, right? Because the one thing I could not understood is how is it possible that 1 times 1 equals 1? 1 times 1 is a multiple of more than 1, isn't it? It's 2, right? But it's 2 lines of 1, 2 lines of 3, and 2 lines of 4. No, it's not. It's 2 lines of setting. It's set in division into lines of equal. North line, east line, west, 2 lines of signals, and 1 lines of surface. But I know what I'm doing. So it understands the codification setting to its clock and system lines, position, location, measure, and 3 track location to its setting. 3 planets. Setting lines, of course, centers of 5 sets, 3 lines of settings of 2 sets, set position, 3 lines of measure, and 4 lines of clocking. All through 1 times 1 equals 1. See? 1 times 1 never equals 1. Never, 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 never. Okay? So what you have to start understand in all communication setting is the configuration setting as a continuous force that high lines of signals. Now, as of Friday, your metric meters and your scales and your communication system, your barometers, thermometers, your translation systems, your transaction lines, your translation communication system, your translucent patterns, your X-ray set position, your echo chambers, your Zulu Fox, high travels, high point lines of graph is no longer going to be in beta. It's going to be alpha, beta, theta. Alpha, beta, theta, guys. That's where it's going to be, right? It's going to be the atmospheres of balance and lines of travel. Okay? So humanity has to get into the dimensional and solar sail. They have to travel through the 1 signal and 2 travels. That's 1. 1 traveling through that. What is that? What is that a configuration system of travel? What is that? What is that a configuration setting from 1? Setting the lines of 3 angles over lines of 6. There's 6. Setting position lines of high position location line, high center location setting, and travel and position lines of 7. Process lines, signal lines of 8 and travel communications, right? 6, 7, 8. There's the codify, there's the argon, there's the binary. 6, 7, 8, lines of coding. 6, 7, 8 equals lines of triangulation box. We get an alpha tone and percentage over question. And execute. Now we execute lines 2 platforms. Okay, and line signal. Line signal location lines into high centers alpha tone. Setting communication lines of 1 mega. This is a continuous force in a clocking system of 0. Equals lines of 4 clocking settings in 3 directions. Ooh-ah. So you have fun with it with the letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. But you have to codify it, which basically 2. You have to travel through 2. 1 here, 2 here. That's all through 2. But look what you create through 2. That's 2. 2 created this. What is it settings of? What is it? It's a bird. Right? Uh-oh. It's a robin. Setting lines attract centers and direct signal. Wah! Right? 2. Number 2 created a robin. You got to use your imaginations. Go beyond recognition. Have fun. That's what this is all about. Is just having fun. Right? You're not having fun when you're not traveling through anything. And they're not traveling through you. Right? But what you have to codify is extremely important now. Because once you come into the mind interpretation setting, your body goes into 100%, guys. 100% measure and scale. That's 100% here, 100% here, and 100% here, right? Of 3, 6, and 9. 12 center is line standing outline sequence, and 24 lines is ground and set position. That's how it's going to be set up on Friday. 24,000 grounds, 12 line signals, outline settings, which is your position of your nebula. Set signals, outline screen adaptations of 2 lines of flux, 2 lines of measure, and communication lines of ground lines of surface. Okay, all through triangulation. Let's do that again. So everything that you're doing is teleporting, telewaving, telecommunication system. So everything has to have a teleportation graph. It center lines its communications to your higher self that controls everything through the Schumann. The avatar basically controls everything to the powers and the generator system locates to its atmospheres and set travels. So you get a position lines of the grounds. Higher self is the grounds, setting location lines, and position coming into the power line, screen adaptation of the lines of 3, position lines of 3, core centers lines of 4 over 5, setting track location lines of 6 over lines, solar graph screens adaptation lines of 7 over measure, scales communication lines of 12, position lines of high settings, nebula, directing lines of core lines, calculation setting and travel. So it controls its system into 12 lines of nebula, setting lines of 13 track centers into the higher self. Can't go higher in that position once it gets in 14 tractions. It automatically comes in position of its atmosphere, setting location to its avatar. Avatar sequence lines of platforms and communication setting the power generation lines of 4 lines of flux and 3 lines of signals, and process communication lines of measure and scale. Process lines in position location of setting to all core centers, line communication setting to exceed 1,000 and travel. The sim modificates the system, controls everything to the AVR setting, overlooking lines of what you created through structure of design. Ground lines of setting. Higher self. Avatar is the power. The sim is position. All right, so the sim and the oversoul, when you put them all through together, you got 3 tractions, high position of flux over screen. All right, so oversoul. So once you get in position of higher self, get in position lines in the high position of the avatar, and position lines of the sim, you get a communication lines to the oversoul. Now the oversoul has a directory that correlates into your triangulation line position of flux over screen, adaptation lines of flux, communication line position, operation line position, location setting, process lines of alpha, data, position lines of theta, theta communication line, operation lines of signal, line position of travel. Directing lines of grounds, over lines of sequence lines of panel, process lines, compressors, direct high center, location setting, and communication setting, all position location to all levels of gigawatts, megawatts. Multi layers and set position of a light bulb. Poof. All through track location into setting, right? Compound, high core centers, lines of travel, directing lines, modification, high position location. My network system, planetary centers, 3 lines of settings that process in position and synchronization. Center lines of ground lines of surface and ground line communication line, high center line position of surface. Okay? Change it information lines of grounds. Okay, so it's all about creating a network system now and setting. Okay, all through tractions, right? So your imagination is already there. You never left your imagination. You just have to get into the detail of codify. Your codification setting through your binaries and organ, then basically you have a better controlling setting and understand how to communicate with harmonics. Harmonics, in line position location of box frame. Right, 1 box frame in settings, 3 triangulation split. Right? Alpha, delta, omega, zeta. 4 different framings. So we get alpha line, we got a delta theta, we got theta omega, omega line zeta. All through frame, all through signal, all through tractions. Lacing lines of 3 tractions and 4 lines of signals. Set position lines of travels. Setting ground lines of surface and track communications. Right? All right, so we get in wave and tones and 4 box lines into triangulation here, triangulation here, triangulation here, triangulation here, triangulation here, triangulation here. Setting communication high position lines of high centers, location near towers of communication. Okay? See? Satellite right there, already set up. Set tone line signals. So it's all about the inner child, 3 lines of signals and ground lines of communication lines of service. Open line panels, open line signal, and modification ground communications. Right? Now, observation changes lines. Once you get intent, everything that you see in your reality in real time changes right away through clocking. You've already created it already, so your thoughts are already there in traction. So you got to be very careful how you connect through your modification system through space modulation settings. It's all through communication high lines of service. Bring it back, and tracks back into vision. All right? All right, so that's all through a box. So you can go through centimeters, honimeters, line conditions. You create whatever you want to create. Doesn't matter what anybody else says. You get in your own codification system, right? Blah, blah, this and blah, blah, that. Blah, blah is the balance of the aligns the level as line position to its atmosphere. Blah, 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 blah. Blah 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 blah. It's alpha. It's alpha, delta, theta. Right? Everything starts off alpha. Everything starts at delta. Everything starts at theta. Right? So you got the atmospheres of grounds. You got the balance communication lines of the powers. And the communication lines of theta, location, imagination. A, B, and T. All right? Alpha, beta, theta. Whoa. 3 triangulations, flux. Then the lines of 4 grounds and set positions and 5 set and subtractions. All right. So now you have to really understand the importance, right? Think before you speak in all of the settings. Because the position lines of Friday is going to be open lines of panel in 3 tractions and 3 centers and 3 set positions. All right, so we got ground communications, power lines, high center, location, atmosphere, lines of space. 3 signify, clocking lines of 0 and travel. Directing lines of ground lines is center position lines of high position of travel. Center core lines and electrical line communication lines of travel. Direct lines of clocking line, rotation, setting, and travel. Center core centers, redirect signals, and ground lines of surface travel communications. Ooh-ah. So, how we set the tone, how we set a solar system is basically a modulation screen, ongoing system in real time. Setting lines of 4 signals and ground lines of setting and position line communication system all through travel. Solar system. Bring it back home, back in signal, back in balance, back in travel. Booyah. So you can do whatever you want. You just have to understand how to clock your systems in seconds, minutes, and hours, minutes, and settings. So you are in control of what you do inside and outside of you through the inner core now. It's going to be a lot more different now because you're constantly looking. You actually think you're looking at a digital pad and not realizing you're looking at the outer space. And it's looking at you through your outer space to your inner space. That's the difference, right? So all thoughts, all actions, all emotions will be on its own platform, on its own planes of its own existing, of its existence in real-time measure in your system, in your position, in your tractions, through your alpha, through your beta, and through your theta, at all communications. So we all have to be prepared of what's going to happen next. If you get a 27-line signal, setting lines of 13 grounds, set position lines into 52 square roots into 35 line settings and set tractions. Okay, 35 line settings and tractions. Open signal, open panel. Process communication over signals, setting communications. Right? You tell me, where's the clocking in this? There's no clocking in this at all. At all. I never said anything of clocking. I never said anything of time because I'm in control of what I do. I codify exactly what it is and what it's supposed to be because I'm in control of what I do myself. I'm in control of what I do without myself. I control what I do within myself because it's all modified inside of you in real time. Everything happening all at once, everything in communication, all lines at high center, figures, high position, travel, in communication lines that travels, interlocations, high centers, and high communications, setting, constant location, high position, system, all through eye tractions. Directing high centers gets all modification grounds for lines at high position. So 20 lines of measure, 13 lines of calculation, 52 high centers into 35 position. Where's the clocking into that? No clocking at all. So I'm in control of the space. I'm in control of the spaceless. I'm in control of the time. I'm in control of the timeless. I say what it is. Now, if I stay in the observation, it doesn't do anything. All right? But if you go in intent, that changes everything. Right in real time. Let me say that again. You guys are coming into your tent through harmonics. And you got to be very careful how you speak through your thoughts. Because when you change the intent, you changed everything in real time. Which it affects you and everybody else that you put in an equation. You understand that? I hope I get a 10-4 on that instead of set positions. But there's no clocking in this setting. Right? Changes all communication lines to high centers. Look at that. S lines of 1, L. Line conditions 1 lines of 2. 3 lines of 2 track locations. Question over 5 sequence. So you tell me, where's the codification setting to travel? Because I codify it right away. 4 lines of ground, center lines of communication setting, all through hieroglyphics. 5 lines of 2 and 3 lines of tractions are lines of Z-force, W lines of width, course centers lines of unification setting, to S lines of 1. Process lines of 1 over 3 are 1 lines of width, process lines of unification lines of L. There's a lot of things you can do. It's your imagination to its core. puts everything in balance, puts everything in all communications ending to flux over screen. But you got to modify the system now through triangulation, through its box, okay? So the box has 4 signals, 3 settings and travel, okay? And the triangulation has a flux of 3 settings and travel. Settings of 3, 6, and 9. So you can have 3, 6, 9 inside or 3, 6, and outside. You can have 3 lines inside and 6 lines outside. That's the inner line core center. So you have to really understand how to project that from your projector to your projection. And that's where it comes into Z positions. So you can bring the 9 line inside or have the 6 line outside, or you can have all 3 inside. You do what you want to do, but you have to codify it first. And you have to have fun with it. So once you understand this in travel, the conscious lines of 2 wants to go through signals of clocking, right? That's coming from its own consciousness. The position of 3 wants to be in a Fibonacci setting to travel, okay, through its own system. The 1 wants to stay one setting, but it wants to be one signal up and travel, an east line. Setting core lines in high position of 1, 2, and 3, set track location setting, wants to be in a box frame, all through its own consciousness. That's the balance, see? I'm communicating with its frequency through harmonics, what it wants specifically. What it wants specifically, its own conscious of its own awareness. It's like if you want a cup of coffee, how do you want your coffee? You want a latte? You know, that's basically what it is. How do you want your coffee? You have your coffee in all different ways, right? Coffee's not coffee. Coffee's never coffee. Coffee's all different levels of coffee. That's what it is, all right? The coffee itself knows what it wants. So you have to identify that. That's a collaboration, a partnership that you guys have to work with and set position in your settings, how to communicate with your alpha, delta, and your position of theta. All through communication of consciousness and settings, right? So that's the in and out and inside of you, right? So let's get a box frame, okay? Setting 2 tractions, setting lines of 4 settings into 3,000 measure. It gets complicated, right? And then you get to 1 point lines of 0 and traction, right? So it's all about understanding what's going on, right? It's in its own consciousness right now, right? So if you're talking directly to any one of these, they communicate with you right away in frequencies. But you have to understand the frequencies of them. They already know the frequencies of you. Let me say that again. They already know the frequencies of you. It's for you to modify its frequency of its box and what's going on with the 3,000 line measure, the 4 calculation system, the 2 tractions, or the 1.0 and set tractions. Anything line core centers has a pivot. Height centers of transits line communicates setting up lines of sequence over pi. Sets core centers in 1, 0. Okay, so the 1 point is 0 location center. The 1 line 0 wants to tell you exactly where it's going. So the 1 wants to be here in center, and the point line centers wants to be overline a correlation system, and the position line the high tractions. Setting lines overline sequence back in time. That's what the 1.0 wants. See what that wants by itself. All right, setting lines of high centers. 2 wants to be in position 1 equals lines of 2. All right, so it wants to equal lines of 2. The set lines of 4 wants a center core system and center calculation 1 center travel. Setting lines of 3,000 measure, sets lines of 3 over here, 0 over here, and signals and 3 settings and travel. That's all its own consciousness, its own awareness, all through a box. All through scale, all through formula, all through equation. All right? So what did it create? A dome. Its own consciousness created a dome. So we have to understand travel now and set position. All through tractions, all through formula, all through equations. All through setting, inside track location, inside position, outside settings. Okay? So I'm just showing you how powerful it is because you see things, how powerful it is. When I look at the digital pad, it's moving by itself. Right? It's actually moving by itself where it's supposed to be. So every time I draw something, it goes back in order. So it's amazing. It has to go back in order because that's where it's comfortable with its frequencies. Remember, everything has a foundation of its grounds that stays in set position locations. You don't change the foundation of its grounds, of its conscious location, if it's comfortable in its hotel golf. You understand that? All right, so in that position, puts all track correlates and high centers of travel. Directing lines of ground lines of service puts everything in line communication setting. If I get a modulation system, I'm looking at arrow lines, point lines of graphs, communicate high centers. I'm looking at point lines into intelligent information system all through travel. Signal lines of modification. And lines of track centers, overline sequence. 4 signals. We get overline graph line. Setting course centers in line communication setting. Travel in point lines of graph. Center course system of 3. and set position. Okay, so I know exactly what it looks like, but I have to go through measure and scale through level. So I know its intelligence is communicate with me, and ground lines of service, overline sequence, overlines of panel, clocking lines of 0, platforms of set traction, set position. Okay, that's what I'm looking at travel. So all this is different intelligence. Just because you see something doesn't mean it's all together. Okay, this modifies the system of alpha, delta. I know it's a lot to take in, guys. Alpha, delta, and omega. That's the wave it's set right there. Right there, just the lens itself. Okay, the base. This is the baseline. Process calculation line, 4 lines of signals, 3 lines of flux and travel, keys and setting, high settings, electrical line grids, set position. All right. Now, setting lines, 4 track centers, high position of 3 measure, scales communication lines of 2 travels, and line position location of 3 lines of measure. Scales communication high position of 3 lines, communication lines of high position location of Brutus matters. Archetypes, swinging lines, screen adaptations, all levels of compass, and travel communication gravitational pull. Boom. Right? Now I'm connecting to its intelligence. See? Where it is in its wave, in its central system, in its operation setting, there was convocation of its awareness. How you look at the actual intelligence, not just looking at the lamp. All right, crossing screen depth settings, process lines of 3 signatures at 3 grounds. Overlines of pi and travel communications. Overline looping, screen lines adaptations of flux over screen, center core system and lines of travel communications. Right? It's an ongoing system, right? Travel. So in that communication, once it changes ground lines of service, process lines of 2 lines of angle. Remember, it's doing its own consciousness, it's travel, showing exactly what it's doing when you're not understanding its identification of its own system through pi. That's what it's doing right now. It's sending out signals, lines, and setting, has position of Pluto. Remember, it has its own travels, has its own direct signal location, its own synchronization, setting to its planets, set positions. It's connecting to Pluto, it's connecting lines to Jupiter, and it's connecting lines to center core of Mercury and set position, 3 travels. All through the lamp. All through the lamp. That's what governs its own space. All through a lamp. Okay? See? It's not a lamp, is it? When it's own governs its own space, its own intelligence. So I'm not looking at the lamp. I'm not looking at it one dimension. I'm looking at all dimensions of what it is. And not only that, the wall is moving. The wall is moving right now, right? So everything's moving. So every time I move back, everything comes in big, 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 big. So the whole projector, the projection just comes right at you. I'm looking at it right now, and it just, and it covers right over you. And you see the design of the lamp, and then you see the galaxy, you see the universe, you see the operation system, you see the travels, you see the ancestry, the history, and the celestial, all through a lamp. It wants to travel through you. So it overlines its system, it overlays its system, it overlines its setting position, its travel. Okay? All through tractions. If we get a provision line setting, process lines indicates the system. See, it's Art Deco. It's kind of like understand the structure line. That's why I took perspective. Process lines of 1 wire. Okay, and we had a ground line. So if you look at the structure of the building, it's pretty amazing stuff. 3 lines of signals and process communication, right? Aerodynamics, 3 lines of signals and travel. Okay? And then I have a shadow line and all rotation, process lines of signatures. Okay, and I'm overlapping the sequence. It's got a line screen adaptation, process lines of signal locations, shadow communication, and I got a wall sequence and lines of panel. All through structure, all through design. Right now, I'm just connecting with the basic grounds of the structure of the wall, and the plasma screen has an open line panel right in the center operation. There's the portal of communication that I go through. There's the portal I go through right through the all-in position. Right. So if I look at it closely, I have lines of high core centers, electrical line dots, and 3 lines of signals and travel. Traveling through, I'm inside the position of the mind system, traveling through the calculation of its wall. Inside the wall. I'm inside the wall now. So I'm looking through the wall and seeing the central lines and gaps. I'm sending calculations, high center interference. There is plasma. There's a little bit of coil resistance. The line scores centers and not intracts center location 3-line division. There's laser line calculations, 3 lines of stargates. Portals are offline. There's a laser track center interference, 3 lines of signals, and 3 graph communications. Okay, so there's a panel off, signal off, center line, rotation setting. Bring it next 8,000. Plaid line, 6 lines of signals, 6 lines of graphs, 6 lines of panels, line position travels, point lines of graph, in position location with portal position lines of traction. That's what I see in settings. Now it's back in position, back in balance. So the wall now itself is back in the settings, back in this operation system, right? So what is the wall saying to me? Thank you. Through its consciousness, see? I fixed the wall. So basically, guys, it's understanding the structure, how everything is built. And once you understand the foundations of everything, everything comes in sequence lines of panel. But it's all done in your mind. So it's like, how do I go through a dimensional wall? Well, this is not X-Men. Okay, this is high level set lines and high position of the translation system, also the mind conception. So you guys have to be very careful now, because you're going to be interpretations of the inception now inside the mind, looking inside of you. So you got to be very careful how you look at things now, because everything is going to be coming at you if you're not consciously aware of it. Okay, it's like two panels in sequence. You're in the center. That's you in the center, right? And basically, it's closing in on you. It's closing in on you, right? And it's just closing in on you more, you know? It's closing in on you more, right? So you better know exactly what you're doing. Setting one lines of sequence, panel lines, open lines of panel, open lines of panel. You get two track correlations, lines of exits. Setting lines of platforms and set position lines of travel, and communication high lines of surface and traction, right? High lines of measure and travel communications, right? Portal here out, and set position, right? So your imagination, basically, it's all about understanding, creating, how to control your thoughts, lines, center, lines, high position, location, settings, lines of tubing, and set position, energize. Process lines of signals and platforms of communication, setting, and travel. Getting communication, high position of grounds, set position of center, and position lines of eye lines, high core centers, and lines of communication. Setting core lines of retractions, indirect signals, ground line, communication lines of high surface. Process lines, indicating system, all through travel. Okay? So there's a lot of things you can do in a building. You can restructure it, you can do it, but you have to have thermal, you have to have echo sonar, and you have to have X-ray. You have to have X-ray Zulu. Foxtrot, directing lines, instruction lines. Foxtrot is the vision, is the cortex, is the schematics, is the primer, and set position in the high setting. 3 signals, 4 lines of settings, process lines, and 3 lines of measure. All right, so it's 4 signals, 4 equals lines of 3, line position of 7 over lines of 12, set position lines of 24, setting measure. Scales, communication lines of 24, measure, communication lines of clocking 0, clocking 0, clocking 0, clocking 1. Right, ground lines of surface, clock lines, communication lines of high setting. Okay, so we go to the plasma walls, indirect signals into arrow, indication system of travel, and point lines of graph. Then we go to the blockchains, setting communication lines of 3 lines of measure and 3 scales communication inside traction. Directing lines of setting, process lines, indication system, all through flux. We go through lines into rectangle, setting 4 signals and travel communications. See? Inside and outside, right? All right, then we go in this system and track locations. Coming in that position, security line to panels, line rotation setting, there's the turn. Okay? Open sequence lines, core centers, location grid, and set position. Okay, open line sequence, high position, non travel. Set position 1, 2, and 3 lines of more, and 5 lines of measurement scale. Setting sequence, high set position lines of travel, in communication, high lines of surface and travel. Okay? So, everything you look at, you're going to see the grounds, you're going to see the panels, you're going to see the atmosphere. You're going to see the grounds, you're going to see the panels, you're going to see the powers, you're going to see the atmosphere all at once in a 4 signal of north, east, west, and south. Right? So that's how you're able to see lines of 4 things in all at once in setting. So you're going to see through pi right away. If you clock your system in setting, a clock line set in position, you got 12 line signals outline, 4 signals in grounds, and set position 12 outside, right? You have 24 ground communications. Right? So you got a ruler indication lines across lines and 3 signals. So you got 1 position 2, 2 lines position of 4. All right? Setting 2 panels and travel in communication lines of setting. Setting lines of sequence, overline cross locations. Process lines, clocking system lines of travel. Eye scepter. Setting lines into all of your cataracts and set position, the eye center. All right, so the eye center opens all signals. So we have set position lines of 3 grounds into inner force, outer force, and inline rotation sending attractions of XC thousands floating inside your eye line. All right, reckoning timelines puts all communication lines of surface and track communication lines into all track locations in set position to its operation system, all through your eye set. Okay, so your eye flickers in 3 signals. That's why your eyes keep blinking, right? Your eyes keep blinking, right? You have to understand why your eyes keep blinking, right? Why do eyes blink? Because they're changing measure scales of the optical screen adaptations of flux over screen, creating lines of anomaly and 3 lines of cycles and 3 set position of ground lines of surface. That's why your eye twitches. Eye twitches line screen adaptations of 4 lines and set position location with setting through travel. This is lotus flower locations to all lines. Ocular screen location setting eye receptor line position location of receptor. Setting course centers lines of travel location of pineal glands. Directing line signal location lines of cerebral. Cortex lines and memory bank. Course centers lines of syntax. Mystical cortex and set lines of codex. Setting lines of travel has 2 panels, lines of sync line, high center interference of 1 atom rotation surface and travel communications. So you just turn your eye into an atom. Boom. Just like that. Eye receptor, 3 lines of signals, floater lines of 12 lines of measure and scale and communications. Travel signals, setting your lines of grounds, overlying sequence in 3 panels, configuration system, all through travel. See what you turn your eye into is an atom. So once we get into that platform, then we extend the skyline grids in set position. See, skyline grids, say course, everything's inside the lines. Communicate the eye line flux communications. 3 signature lines of grounds, center course system. Earth line rotation serves and travels into gravitational pull, sending travel communications. Remember, that's your eye. Change information lines of ground, so 3 lines of signals and set position. See, your eye constantly changes. It's like light reflection. Coloration lines, light metaphors, how it travels in position. So your eye lines of signals here turns into a triangulation. Now it changes in 3 lines of signals of triangulation. So that's communication lines of box line triangulation. So the communication lines of frame. But remember, everything's inside your system through clocking. Right? So this is inside, this is outside. Okay? So that's what it is, right? That's outer spectrum there. This is inhabitation zone. Okay? This is a no-no. You're not ready. So you have to understand the inner to understand the outer inside of you clocking, right? Then you understand as you go out in position, you're now in the 12 clocking system, a nebula. But once you get out of 12 nebula, you're being sucked through a dimensional line scale, line position of galaxies, screen lines, adaptation of flux, and set location of seconds, minutes, and hours. Sets the routers and routers, high course centers, lines of travels, and maximum location of force and track location. Okay? Yeah. That's exactly what you guys have to identify now. Okay? So I'll show you again so you get a true understanding how this all works in provision to division. Okay? We got a box screen. A set of box screen locations, right? This is the center of view. Okay? This is the outside center of view, right? This is your clocking system inside of you. Okay? So you have to understand how to create the anomalies of arrow point lines that track center location setting northeast, west, and south, and then create it through location setting to create it through a triangulation throughout the eye. Right? The eye is always in the center operation. Okay, the eye is always in the center operation system. The eye is always in the center, right? Eye is always in the center. Okay, but it's constantly changing form. So what you have to understand is the eye division lines, high position of all metric meters and magnetics, magnesium lines, pole line, course centers lines, magnetic pole line, position compressors, decompressor location, setting and travel. Setting lines of eye sequence, panels, communication lines of flux are 3 in travel communications. Setting flux line, green course centers and tubing, course center location of potting, directing signal lines of ground lines of surface and track communications high position. Right? So your eye center lines and communication lines in this, sets communication high centers lines of this, and set lines of travel and communication lines at high center location of this and travel, right? So if there's a line signal there, it's like a vein line. Vein line course centers overline sequence. Veins come in and veins go out. Okay, the veins are the set lines of the floaters and set sequence lines of communication setting a surface. All right, so there's the eye lines, screen lines into all levels, communication lines of grounds. The center course system is a line signal, setting lines in high position of the floaters and screen adaptations of flux over screen. The eye central system is the high course center of its own hotel and set position and travel, right? Direct lines, modification lines, change the box frames, and triangulation screen line adaptation to its center through its core, the cataract. Directing eye line signals, process lines, the oracle screen location system all through travel. Setting core lines of tractions have a direct line signals and location setting to the pyramid of its eye in traction. Pyramid of its eye. Setting signals, this is where it goes in Hades and Corpus and Hermes and location of Thoth. Setting lines of travel. Eye the center, eye the pyramid. 7 line signals. Setting graph communication lines of screen adaptations at all levels of capsule communication. Setting direct signals of ground lines of service. Setting triangulation of flux of communication lines of ground lines of communication. And set position of travel. Okay? Inside of you, inside you, inside you. Right? So once you understand more levels, guys, everything is inside setting. So you actually are going to be in position here. This is your eye. You're going to be in the center position here. That's what it's going to look like. It's going to start with the box. It's going to start with the triangulation box, box frame, position, locations. So all it is, basically, we got in that line communication lines into the capillaries, like all line course centers, lines of travel. The capillaries lines is the window graph, communication screen lines, adaptations, all levels, graphing, communication lines, high position, location, measure, scales, communication lines, the height lines, the surface interactions, right? But all this is done inside your eye. XC1000's all inside your eye. Everything's in set position. So we have to recognize the eye itself. That's the eye, the windows of the soul. The eye, the window of the soul. The eye, the window, the soul. You got it? So the soul itself is clocking a system of north, east, west, and south in position of its data, a process of intel. Okay? The eye central system and never leaves the system. That's you. That's the true authentic you. That's the eye itself. The eye itself has to understand how to flux in different angles, how to travel through settings of your theta communications. Right? Creating from this, creating from this, creating from this. Look what I created, triangulation flux inside my eye. Right? Everything's done from the eye. So that's the inside. The outside is here. Okay? Anything outlying position is your 12 clocking system. Then you get 11, then you get 10. Don't go below 10,000 deck. Because you're in different dimension, different scale, different balance, different planes, different existing of intelligence at a lower ground frequency. Setting lines of track centers, setting lines of box frame communication setting. Now, it doesn't matter, you go and measure anything through box frame. Get at 12 line signals, outline screen, set position. All right? So anything below 10. Okay? Setting sequence lines of position, right? Anything below 10 changes the alteration setting to all levels of your Earth in the opposite direction. Okay? Flux over screen, high course centers in the opposite line screen. Setting lines of 2 panels over operation line, position obsolete. Setting travel endpoint lines of graph in 45 angles and set position lines of travel. So how important is to stay above 10,000? Because if you get on your 12 clocking system, woof, you got a galaxy shift line that changes your position of course in your solar system lines of traction. Sets lines, course centers, and Earth line rotates the system in the opposite direction. Your Earth rotates in the opposite direction, same location setting. It goes in the opposite direction, guys. All through setting. Okay, process lines of 3, process lines of 4. Signature lines, ground lines of 6 over measure over scale. Now, what we have to identify is basically how does that work in all lines of routers and routers? How do we modify the system lines of travel that basically puts all position location to its system all through balance? Same lines of ground communication, sending the travel communication to its all lines of high surface, right? Getting ground lines of high centers and all line communication and getting grounds of communication sent to your Earth and traction. Okay, bring it in signal, bring it in balance, bring it in communications. Okay, so your Earth will go in the opposite directions, right? So the whole Earth that's inside you will shift its anomaly. Okay, at 12 clocking, which is a nebula, will suck you in an evac line, so galaxy shift line, course centers lines of travel, and have an opposite location obsolete. You guys will be offline, off grid, and roguing in separate lines of travel. Right away in signal. That's where the galaxy shift lines and takes your planet in sequence into an overlying position of panel, living in position lines back in time. Hooah! Okay? That's a no-no. Okay? Stay above the 24,000 ground. That's it in travel. I hope you guys had fun. I know I did. So there's a lot being understood to understand what's going on in track location to its system off the settings. Let's see, high position lines, high centers. Unison will be in line screen adaptation of Colossus course centers into Stargate measure. Star portals into Commander 6. Directing signal lines of flight navigation settings in 4. See you guys in 5.